This podcast is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Currently, you can get free delivery on all orders over £40 and 10% of all online orders by using our code of TakesThatChance10.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Brady down the left and Moy stayed onside. Here's Mounier! 2-0 Huddersfield Town on the opening day of the Premier League. 1-2 wicket Tunga. Here's Moy, right-footed. 1-0 Huddersfield Town. Lindelof misses his header. De Quattro's in. Round De Gea. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. Here's Sanka to turn it into the pass. Yes! And Tommins scored. Tommins has scored one of the most important goals of Huddersfield Town's history. De Quattro's forward. De Quattro's got the better. Yes! And Laurent De Quattro scores. Laurent De Quattro scores.
So, can Town wrangle some points against the Rangers, ladies and gentlemen? Let's find out. Howdy, and welcome to the warm-up, episode 24. Joining me, your host, Brady Frost, to preview the QPR game, is a man who is desperate for the saloon bars to open back up. It's Mr. James Whittaker. James, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for that
Lovely
intro.
Stuff. That's all right. Anyway, you've heard him already this week with the Yokels on the live podcast. Joining us for his warm-up debut is Mr. Simon Copland. How are you, Simon?
I'm not bad, thank you, Brady. Feel very much like Yaya Sonego today. I am very well aware I am not choice A, B, C, D, E, or maybe even F for this podcast, but I have kind of a last-minute call-up, if you like. I'm happy to fill in. Let's hope I can last for 70 minutes like Yaya did against Cardiff.
Well, I hope this podcast isn't 70 minutes, mate, but it's good to have you on. And like Yaya Sonego, we will completely rip up the script and just rely on you solely. So let's
no pressure.
Anyway, so we will move on because we have a game at the weekend. So we'll set the scene and talk about QPR. So they are 12th in the league. And to be honest, lads, this is very boring, but they've won 12, drawn 10 and lost 12 like that, rounded. But they are actually in great form. They've only lost 3 in their last 10 and won 6. And they have also won 4 of their last 5 at home. So going to be a bit of a tricky game, really. I was having a quick look at the stats. So this one's for the stats nerds. But most of their goals have actually come in the last 15 minutes of games. So they've scored 10 in the last 15 of games. So we'll have to watch out. Interestingly, though, they have conceded most of their goals in the first 15 minutes of the second half. And we know what Town are like. They can start the halves quite well. So interesting. It was a 2-0 win for Town last time these two played. So I'll come to you, Si, because you're the guest. I'd like to put you on the spot. Do you remember much about that match? And I suppose, how do you think Town have been playing in general?
Yeah, kind of remember back to the 5th of December it was. And from what I recall, and from the highlights I've rewatched since, it started really well. Arguably 2 of the best goals of the season. And we left that game thinking everything was rosy and we were on a high. Quite quickly, probably after Christmas, our mood changed. Just go back to your point before, I think kind of QPR for me are symbolic of the championship. They are very much a reflection of the majority of clubs in the league in that they can beat anyone and they can lose anyone. I did some research, Brady, you'll be proud. But in the last 7 games, they've beaten Brentford, they've beaten Bournemouth, but they've lost to Birmingham. And that for me is just a reflection on kind of the championship as a collective, really, and how it's very different from the Premier League and other leagues kind of around the world. But sorry to come back to your question. It was obviously a great win, great performance that day. I think we all hoped to kind of continue that vein of form for the rest of the season. That hasn't to be. We've obviously had some injuries since then. Corona being arguably the one that springs to mind, having scored that goal. But let's hope we can replicate some of that form this coming Saturday.
Here's hoping, mate. James, what about yourself? I know you've been on this a bit recently, but do you remember much about the game? And we haven't had you on for a couple of weeks. Has Town been better for you recently?
Yeah, they've been a little bit better. Picked up a bit in my absence, so I don't really know what that means. But yeah, like Si said, really, we dominated the game in the reverse fixture. Had some, I mean, we even had more chances falling to Campbell and O'Brien that we could have scored more. Really, they were quite toothless, to be honest, and they didn't really create many chances for themselves. One thing I did notice from the reverse fixture was it was actually the game that Schindler sort of did his knee in, and I've watched it back today, and it actually looked really nasty. He's trying to do a sort of recovery tackle on Samuel, and it was a really good tackle, but yeah, it made me a bit sad actually, because I think we have really missed him this year. And but yeah, otherwise it was very dominant performance for us, and they seem like a completely different team since then. They've been on a great run of form in the new year. They actually went on a seven game winning run, which has massively sort of picked them up the table, because previously they were looking a bit like relegation candidates. So yeah, it's again like Si said, they're a bit similar to us in that respect. They do try and play like a possession style football, but I think even their styles changed a little bit to go a bit more direct to Austin. So, but yeah, two inconsistent teams against one another. So it should be an interesting one, really.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. I'd forgotten that was the game where Schindler got injured, but I do agree with you, James. Not obviously we can be optimistic with Town and not so optimistic, but I think the Wednesday game wasn't, because funny enough we're playing them again after this. But I feel like we won both those games 2-0, and I think we were just better, and the other teams didn't really offer much. So, but anyway, that's another preview for another day. Si, as James rightly pointed out, QPR have made a few changes, brought a few people in. But who, for this game coming up on Saturday at Loftus Road, who is your key player for QPR? Who do you think is going to cause us problems?
Yeah, I mean, James mentioned it there. Charlie Austin, 5 goals and 10 appearances. For me, never been quite a Premier League striker, or never been good enough to hold down a regular spot in a Premier League team week in, week out. But at the same time, a very good calibre of player for the Championship. He's obviously been at QPR previously and returned there, and seemingly found some good form. And I guess in some respects, I'm not particularly a fan of Charlie Austin, the person, from what I know of him and from what I've seen kind of over the years. But everything that Town wanted and needed in the January transfer window, yet QPR managed to snaffle him up. And should he have been someone we were sniffing around? Perhaps, possibly we were. Probably maybe didn't want to come to the north. I don't know. But yeah, for me, he's the one to watch. He's the one that kind of certainly our defence will have to mark closely. And forgive me, Brady, I picked a second one. But it would be kind of obviously Chris Willick. He was someone who was obviously at Town at the back end of last season. Someone who we were linked with quite heavily in the summer as well, who I think at certain times we all thought was going to come through the door as a permanent signing. I haven't followed him too closely at QPR, admittedly. 1 goal in 26 games is not a prolific return, but it does suggest he has been involved in and around the squad on most games, really. I have no doubt he'll want to prove a point against us. But it doesn't worry me in the same way that Charlie Austin does.
That was interesting because, I think you might have given away James's key player, but we will see.
Oh, sorry. You can cut that bit out if you want, Brady.
No, was that right? No, mate. This is everything stays in. I was going to ask about Charlie Austin. I was going to ask about Charlie Austin, because I think there were. I don't know how strong the rumours were, but maybe it was someone we were looking at. Would you have him at Town?
Oh, I definitely would do. Yeah, I think from a sort of player that he is, he's a goal scorer, he's a finisher. He's everything arguably we haven't had this season. Carl and Grant departed. I'm no expert, but I imagine his wage demands would dictate that he's something or someone who we wouldn't be able to bring into the club. But if you said to me at the end of the season you can have Charlie Austin on a 2-year deal up top, I think he kind of guarantees you at this level 20 goals a season. And that certainly puts you in mid-table, maybe kind of has you pushing higher up as well.
No, I'd agree with that. And I think we'll hear from Clive, from the QPR fan later, but he said he's kind of added a bit of grit and a bit, talking to the ref and the stuff that fans may not like, but, it helps you win decisions. I
think he's everything, sorry, Brady, he's everything that as an opposing club you hate as a fan. He's one of them you always pick out in the stands and level your abuse at. But he's one of those you want on your team as well at the same time, and you're kind of happy to see him kind of start a game, and quite perhaps Johnny Hogg in that respect, kind of almost doesn't have the perhaps wind the fans up in the way that Austin might do, but one of those you probably want on your team.
No, I'd agree. Although him kneeing Lossell in the face in the Premier League wasn't great. James, what about yourself? Who's your key danger man for QPR?
Well, I've gone for Elias Chair. I did. Well, Charlie Austin was my main one, to be fair, just because of the reasons you and Si have said, like the goal return so quickly. He's already scored 5 goals. He's only joined in January. But I've gone for Elias Chair as a backup, really. So he scored 3 goals in his last 2 games, which is not bad going. Scored a header against Wickham in midweek, despite being 5'2", which again I think is pretty good. He's one of them players, young player, attacking midfielder, and it's sort of Austin as the sort of 9, and then they sort of play Chair and Willick as 2 sort of attacking midfielders behind him, and that's pretty good going really for the Championship. Pretty good attack there. So I think that he's a great player. He's got high pass completion rate, 82%, which is pretty good to say that he's playing the risky passes and he's creating the chances for them. He's got 1 assist, but he's actually got 5 expected assists. So it essentially means he's creating the scoreable chances. But until Austin, they haven't had the people to put them away. So I think Charlie Austin has fundamentally changed their season. But they are a team that create chances, so I think that Elias Chair will be a key player for them as well.
James, you have literally read word for word what I've put about Elias Chair. Even the expected assists.
You have to think on your feet already.
I'm just gonna. I'm hosting, so I can decide. I'll just add on to that. Yeah, no, I think he's good. I think, just exactly word for word. I think he's replaced Eze, who obviously is doing good things with Crystal Palace in some respects. And like I say, I look at QPR, and Si made the good point. They are kind of a side I always associate with the Championship, but they have got some young, exciting players. And you both touched on Chris Willick, and I think if I kind of add to that, maybe because he was my backup choice, I think I would have liked to see him back at Town. I know that was kind of debated on the other pod, but I think we saw, he didn't play that much, but I think we saw he can score and he worked hard and he had a point to prove. And I'm a bit gutted really that he didn't join us. What about you, James? Would you have had Willick?
Yeah, I think I definitely would have had him back, particularly since we've seen with Aarons, he looks like a great player, but the injuries have just come along straight away. Hopefully we can get him playing, but yeah, with Willick I was quite impressed. He was sort of had a sort of moments player rather than a sort of consistent performer, and I know you often get that with attacking players, but yeah, he had that against Bristol City. He scored a really good goal, and I think, to be honest, he played really well in midweek against Wickham, and I know they're no great shakes, but yeah, it's a little bit gutting. It feels like we've missed out on another one there, to be honest. And typical Town, now he'll probably score against us, and well, I was going to say he'd do some wagging his finger to the away fans, but we're not there, so he can't do that. But I don't know. I've just got a nasty feeling about that. But no, I would have definitely had him. I think that he was good. He didn't. I don't think he set the world alight in his loan spell, but I think he showed enough, and I think that's kind of what recruitment policy has been based off. Like you said, Brady, players who point to prove, players who've shown a little bit, and trying to make that more consistent. So yeah, just hope at least we know the player quite well.
Yeah, and we know Town's recruitment policy at the moment. He has played for us before, so we might get him back. Who knows?
That's very true, actually.
Joking aside, players who used to play Town, we're going to start talking about players who do play for Town currently. Your key player for this game, from the Huddersfield perspective, Si, you missed the Willick chat. You can jump in on the Willick chat if you want, but who's your key player for Town?
I mean, it's interesting. Just mention Willick first of all. Then, so for me, a difference of opinion. Actually, I'm quite glad we missed out on him. Really, I kind of think right now this season that we're in, he probably would have made a bit of a difference. But I don't think he's someone who takes us up the table. I think for me is a player who is probably bottom end of the Championship player at best. And for that reason, I guess I live in optimism that we'll be able to attract someone of a slightly higher calibre or someone with a bit more potential, and maybe Rob Thomas or Danny Grant or Orlando Aarons could be that player instead. I may be sat here kind of, well, if you invite me back, Brady, who knows? But I may be kind of sat here on next week's podcast or next season's podcast, very much eating my words and asking you to delete this episode. But who knows? We'll wait and see. That's my opinion. In terms of kind of the key man for Town, it's interesting. I'd probably mention Lewis O'Brien. I think be interested to see what happens. Rumour has it Johnny Hogg is back in the squad and available. But I think a lot has rested on O'Brien in those last couple of games in that midfield without him. He's obviously kind of been moved back into centre midfield, won the captain's armband, and I think we've seen glimpses of why he was so good kind of last season, getting on the ball, driving forward, running the ball, being in and around the box, breaking play up, etc. Obviously, he's had a spell at left back, and I think prior to that, he was in midfield, but kind of not really doing the role that he's become familiar with, all that plays to his strength. So I think we're now starting to see the best of him. I think we need that to continue. But for me, kind of, he's an important player this week coming.
That's a great pick, sorry. And also, you can have different opinions, mate. You know, this is what it's all about.
Or if we all thought the same thing, wouldn't it?
Exactly. But I think I've just clicked the kick out button. Anyway, James, key player for you for Huddersfield.
As I said, I'm going to go with Jonathan Hogg. So I've listened to the Corberan press conference, which I was hoping would come out soon before this podcast was recorded, and it did. So, and he said that he'll be travelling with the squad. Now, I've obviously not seen him in training, so I don't know how fit he is. But I did Google him today, and the second picture that comes up is a picture of him with his shirt off, which I sent to Brady without context. And I can't help but clarify that. Yeah, I can't help but notice he keeps himself in good condition. And Carlos has said that he's played a lot of football, so I think he will be able. He's reading between the lines. It looks like he'll be able to slot straight back in, which is the way that Hogg usually works after injuries. To be honest, he doesn't seem to need that same time to come back in. So for me, I think he goes straight back in if he's anywhere near fit, even if it's half an hour at the end, at worst. He's played in, I worked it out, I think this is right, 7 relegation battles for Huddersfield Town. And we've only gone down in one of those, which I think are pretty good odds. So I think he's a good man to have around at the moment. As we've said, QPR play with a bit of a sort of forward diamond, maybe you'd call it, with like Austin as the 9 and then Chair and Willick sort of playing off him. And that's worked well, but I think it lacks a little bit of pace and width, and they're relying on a sort of 5 at the back with wing backs. So I think that with Hogg there, I think he can disrupt players like Chair, like Willick, who do lack that physicality if they are in a more central role. Both quite young players, and to be honest, I think that if you've got Jonathan Hogg getting in the faces, snapping at their ankles, it'd really disrupt players like that who are young and who don't have the same physicality. So I think we very much missed him. I think it's a Jonathan Hogg game, and I think that from what I can tell about QPR, they do seem to have a little bit of a soft underbelly, and I don't think they'd like a player like Jonathan Hogg. Not that many do.
No, so James, can I ask you a question? Sorry. So would you drop Alex Vallejo then to fit Jonathan Hogg?
I don't know if that's jumping forward, Brady.
Oh, sorry, forgive me.
So eager, so eager.
I wouldn't drop Vallejo because I like him as well. But yeah,
we'll just play 12. Don't worry about it.
Just play them all.
I mean, O'Brien is quite small. Maybe they won't notice. Just to clarify about that as well, I think the term we used for Jonathan Hogg, shirtless picture, was he was swole. He's very muscly. I'm quite taller than him, but I saw that picture and I was a bit scared. Not that I think I could take Jonathan Hogg at all. You know,
the weirdest thing is when he was at Watford, he looks quite slight, and then I just think it's just been a thing that's sort of crept up on us. We've not noticed it because in the time that he's been here, he wasn't like that when he first played for us. It's something that definitely worked on.
So that relegation fight, he took the word fight seriously. He had to get ripped. Anyway, I'm sure all the listeners are enjoying us talking about shirtless Jonathan Hogg. But my key player is not Jonathan Hogg. I was chatting to Clive from Loft For Words, who's the QPR fan, and it's quite interesting what he was saying. He seemed to suggest that QPR tend to play better against teams that play football like us. So Si touched on it, but like Brentford, Bournemouth, the teams kind of beat. But my key players, we've kind of seen a change of style since he's come in, and I've gone for Yaya Sanogo. Just because I think we saw, before he came in Birmingham, but against Cardiff, we were offering something different. And, he is a tall lad. I think he won a lot of headers, and he had a really good game, to be honest, until the penalty miss. And even after that, it was, a bit unlucky. But I think he seems really key to that. And, if we are playing that style, I think he could really, like you touched on it, James, they've got a bit of a soft underbelly. I think if he's up for it and partner with Campbell, we could get some joy if Yaya plays. So I've gone for him. I think they're all good choices anyway. But I would say that. Anyway, we'll come on to return to the Mac. Si, it's your debut, so I'll go to you again. Which former Town player would you bring back for this one-off game? Before you do, I might just add, my choice is terrible, and that's because I have to pick someone different every week. But go on.
Oh, well, now I feel a bit of pressure. I did debate this for a little while. And I think in the team that I've picked, and based on the performance last Friday, I'm much more confident in the defence. And I feel like we need some attacking threats up top. So the obvious contender, I guess, going back over the last few years, would have been Carl Grant, or would have been maybe Steve Mooney. But I've actually gone for Lauren de Platra, which is a bit left field. I tried to be different. But I thought in that first season, there was a player in Lauren de Platra, and I think he'd have been very much suited to the Championship. And he's almost kind of got some attributes that Yaya has as well. He's a big man, can win aerial duels, head the ball. So yeah, that's the person I picked.
No, I love that, mate. To be honest, I picked him, and Matt and Chris Markham is obviously going to work for Bolton now, slated me after the record, saying it was a terrible choice. But I agree with you, mate. He worked hard. He wasn't. They kind of joke that, Town fans love a player who works hard and doesn't do much else. But I agree with you. I thought he would have done great in the Championship. He just obviously didn't fancy it. But he'd run his socks off, and he scored some obviously important goals for us. I also think of that one. I know we lost to Chelsea, but that great header he did from across. I think, I agree with it. Great shout. You get my vote, mate. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, James, what about you? What's your choice?
I think, I've gone for Wayne Allison, the Chief. So I think from what I can gather from Brady's key player and from what you said, Si, about Laurent de Platra, that there's a bit of a pining for a big centre forward, and this is obviously very much a feature of following Huddersfield Town. I don't think any Town fan could say they don't like a big centre forward. I think it's just part and parcel, particularly when things go wrong. It's the first person that we look for. So I've got a massive soft spot for any Huddersfield lad that plays for Town. And a big centre forward, of course, and that's just Wayne Allison. So I was very young when he was playing, to be fair, but my dad did take me at the time, and regaled me with a lot of tales of Jacko's Great Escape season. I looked on Wikipedia; he's actually got a PhD now so he's actually the doctor, not the chief. but not to achieve, But helped us get out of a relegation battle after coming in January. So he has experience of a relegation battle. Held up the ball really well and scored 6 goals just in the second half of the season. But like I say, we can't have Wayne Allison, but we'll have to make do with Brady's Yaya Sanogo.
He is mine. I love Yaya. I hope he stays next season. He's Naby Sarr's mate as well, so we know what Naby Sarr's been like this season. What could go wrong? Anyway, my return to the Mac pick is just to rile Si clearly because he doesn't like him. I actually did pick Chris Willick before we recorded. The only reason being, I agree with James. I think he was a moment's player. We saw that good finish against Bristol City. I think we need a player like him, given with Cromer's out at the moment. I know we kind of tweaked the style a bit, but we saw against West Brom, obviously former club, how determined he was to score against them. And in this hypothetical situation, we've got him back from QPR, so I think he'd be up for it because he'd only join us if there was something gone wrong. And obviously we were linked with him, and he's been playing well. And gone for Chris Willick. And I agree with James. I think I don't know if I wouldn't say definitely score, but I think he'll have a good game because he just seems that type of player who's up for it when he plays a former club. So we will see who wins. I think I know who, as I said, I know who gets my vote, but we will see.
Chris Willick get mine anyway.
Would he? He wouldn't.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't.
Oh.
I was going to say, does you choosing him for return to the Mac take him out of the QPR team, or does it mean it's Chris Willick, like on FIFA, where it's just the same player? It's like Chris Willick QPR versus Chris Willick Huddersfield Town.
I don't know. We've never explored this as an option. Maybe we should just spend the rest of the podcast
another team's player off him. Yeah,
might do that. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame Naki's not a QPR anymore. Could have done the same.
Yeah. Well, I did consider it, to be fair.
Lovely stuff. Anyway, I realise that's a conversation for another day. Maybe that should be a separate podcast. Examining the rules of return to Mac. But I spoke to Clive from QPR fan site Loft For Words ahead of this game, and here's what he had to say. And we're recording. Cool. I'm joined on the line now by Clive from QPR blog, fan site, and pretty much everything Loft For Words. How are you, Clive?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Can't complain. So we'll come on to QPR at the moment anyway. So it's been quite the turnaround for you guys this year. Quite a few wins, compared to us. What's happened for the change? Mark Robertson, last time we spoke, I think he was under a bit of pressure, but you guys are firing on all cylinders at the moment.
Yeah, it's been amazing start to the year, considering how all of 2020 went, really. I mean, we came back from the lockdown in really poor form. The last 7 or 8 games of last season were just nowhere near. Obviously lost a lot of quality players from last year's team. Eze, Bright Eze, Samuel's gone. Naki Wells, who obviously played for you guys. Jordan Hugill, Ryan Manning's, quite a lot of talent has gone out of the team and been replaced with sort of projects and punts, I guess. Some of whom have worked and some of whom hadn't. And start of the season was very concerning. When we lost at Huddersfield, which is about as bad as we've played this year. There's been 1 or 2, but we're so bad that day. That was part of a run of 10 games going into Christmas that we didn't win. And at that point, when we lost to Swansea sort of between Christmas and New Year and just weren't at the races again, we're not a club that shies away from chopping the manager. So it felt at that point like it was probably coming towards another change. And yeah, since really start of January, it's spun around so much. We obviously brought in some experienced players in January who've made a big difference. Charlie Austin and Stefan Johansson have been great since they came in on loan. We've also changed the system and gone to a back 3, which suits the centre backs a lot more. Gets our pretty mediocre fullbacks further up the pitch where they can't be exposed as they were being before. And we've started taking some of the chances. Austin's scored 5 goals when Dykes and Bonn were struggling before, and it's all clicked, and it's starting to snowball a little bit now because they're getting confident.
Yeah, and like you say, it's been quite the run recently. Is how much credit does Warburton deserve for this changing it around? Because I know it was a bit split with the fan base when we last spoke.
Yeah, I mean, even at the end of the 10-match losing run, there was a poll on our site that I think 60% was still in favour of keeping him, which is quite a lot considering it wasn't just those 10 games. I think going back sort of 30 games right to the start of the year, we'd only won 5 or 6 times or something like that. So for the fans to still be with him, QPR sack managers all the time, and they often replace them with somebody completely different. If you look at what you bounce from Warnock to Mark Hughes, just completely different characters and styles. Hughes to Harry Redknapp, that's a total change again. Harry Redknapp to Chris Ramsey. Chris Ramsey's very attacking manager. You go from him to Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, who's all about fitness and defence. You go from him to Ian Holloway, who's just nuts. You go from Holloway to Steve McLaren, who's all, new teeth and PR lines. And then you go from him to Mark Warburton. It's just different every time. And every time you do that, you have to tear your squad apart and start all over again. Most summers we're doing 12 or 13 players out and in, and it just doesn't build. You can't build any cohesion. You find yourself sort of making the same mistakes at the same time of the year. It's March now. We'll go on that little run where we're quite glad of the points we've got, and we're going to run the relegation zone close. It kind of repeats itself every year. So I think a lot of people felt that if we could get through a bad spell without sacking the manager and actually keep faith with someone, get him some players in January, we would be better for that. And at the moment, that's what it feels like.
And yeah, well, long may it continue for you guys. I mean, what's kind of the expectation for the rest of the season? How would you like to finish strong, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this on our site in the week about if we are all back in the grounds in August, as we're all hoping with the vaccines and everything. I mean, me and my mates can't wait to get back, like just absolutely craving being at the games and whatever. But I think for a lot of people are going to be perhaps a little bit worried about being back in grounds, being back in crowds, people who live out of town who come in on the train and have to use the tube and things. I think a lot of people are going to be wary about that. I think also a lot of people are going to have noticed, I mean, I've certainly noticed the difference it makes to your bank balance, not dropping 150 quid on a Saturday 4 times a month, going to Preston away and things like this, that you can get out of the habit, I think, of going to football. You see it happen with people who used to be home and away, and then we're only home, and then we're picking and choosing their games, and suddenly you don't see those people anymore. I think the game was only to get to 52 points, and we're nearly there now. And with the games we've got, Wickham last night was one of 3 home games. We got you guys Saturday, and then we got Millwall. Then we're away, but we've still got Sheffield Wednesday to play at home, still got Coventry to play at home. I mean, Warburton always says, show me an easy game in the Championship. I'm not saying these are going to be easy, and I'm not saying we're going to win them, but it's not a bad fixture list to have. And I'd like to see us not just do that footballer Mykonos thing of getting to 52 points and that's us done for the season. I'd like to see us push on, play like we did at Bristol City on Saturday with all of our young players in the team and actually passing the ball and looking really good, just to give people something to be a bit excited about after a terrible year on and off the pitch. If we could just give some hope for next season that it's not going to be a huge summer turnover, it's not going to be a new manager, it's going to be this team and these young players playing like this and winning regularly as they are at the minute. It'll just build a bit of excitement again for August, which I think could be quite important, season ticket sales and things like that after obviously so long away.
No, I think that's a really good point. We'll come on to the match at the weekend shortly, but you mentioned how when we played each other earlier in the season, it was one of the worst performances you'd seen. What did you actually make of Huddersfield on the day, if you can remember that back, and just Huddersfield?
Yeah, I mean, I was really, really, really impressed with Huddersfield. I don't know. I think I've seen you 4 or 5 times whenever you've been on TV this year, and I don't think I've seen you play as well as you played against us. And we would dreck. So to be honest, that it was much more than a 2-0 game. That I thought that was a 3 or 4-0 Huddersfield win in all but name for me. I've got to be honest, at the start of the season, I really feared for Huddersfield because I thought, having gone down that Cowley route the way you did and survived the way you did playing that football, to then tear it all up in what was a much shorter summer And he didn't even do it at the start of the summer. To tear it all up and bring in, Bielsa's mate, and basically that's a complete change of ethos and styles and everything from the Cowleys. To try and do that in that summer with a team that obviously had got used to losing, I thought was a huge risk for Huddersfield. And I think our pre-season prediction was for Huddersfield to be fourth bottom, I think. And I think we said that you were favourites in the race to abandon it all and appoint Mick McCarthy halfway through. But actually, that's turned out to be Cardiff, and it's gone super well for them. So maybe we shouldn't have taken the piss quite so much. But yeah, so I was surprised how well it was going when we played you guys. Looked a good team, threatening, much better than us. So I was surprised and was sort of ready to eat my words a little bit. And then obviously, for reasons I can't quite comprehend, and I haven't read your answers to my questions yet, so maybe it's in there, it's really dropped off a cliff since the start of January. I mean, you would be able to say better than me why that is. QPR fans will blame it on Richard Keogh, who's a bit of a QPR legend. I don't know. Like I say, trying to play out from the back when you've got people like Stearman and Keogh and whatever. I don't quite know how successful that's going to be. It worked before Christmas and doesn't now. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what you guys look like on Saturday, because you tanked us first time.
Yeah, and what are you expecting from the game of Saturday? Obviously, it's completely different for both sides, but how do you see it panning out?
I mean, famous last word. We're better usually when teams try and play football against us. We're quite a good football team. Like, we always make this joke about us being sort of nice boys. And when teams pass and it becomes a passing game, we're usually quite good at that. Although, again, Huddersfield battered us first time, but so don't judge us on that. We tend to struggle like we did last night at Wycombe, and we got absolutely battered last week by Barnsley. It's like in the one bad result in this run. And I mean, you'll have seen Barnsley this year. It's a fairly unique, abrasive style they've got. So teams that play like that against us tend to get good results, high press and physical and pace and stuff. So I'm not sure whether Huddersfield are capable of playing like that or whether they'll try. At the moment, when teams try and play football against us, like Brentford did and Bristol City did, we turn them over. So I've got everything crossed that that's how it goes on Saturday. But QPR have a habit of, just as you get your hopes up with them, it comes back to bite you. So I'll keep it cagey, but I'm quietly confident if you try and play us at football, and we don't fall in a hole like we did at yours, I think we might return the favour. But famous last words.
Well, we'll see, mate. We never know with Huddersfield at the moment. But yeah, just before I ask you for a score prediction, who are the kind of players we need to watch out for, like your kind of key danger men at the moment?
Interesting to see what team we pick. Warburton rotates a lot, particularly when we've had a midweek game. Chris Willick's played really well last two games. He was on loan at you guys last year and has sort of had to wait a long time for his chance. So I think we'd like to see him start and play like that again. Ilias Chairs, decent little player. Although a little bit guilty at the minute of hanging on to the ball too long. Charlie Austin's obviously the goal threat, and we attack a lot through the wing backs. You'll see a big switch out to Todd Kane quite often, and goals off his crosses. His crosses can be a bit hit and miss, but he gets so many opportunities to cross at the moment in the way that we're playing. He's racking the assists up, and some of his assists have been quite good, but like when we played away at Watford and 1-2-1, he got an assist in that. But I think he had about 25 crosses in the game. It's almost like throwing enough shit at the wall. But yeah, look, we're a steady team at the moment and reasonably confident, eminently gettable. So yeah, it'd be an interesting game.
Yeah, I feel like this has got Charlie Austin scoring all over it. Town fans don't really like him after he kneed our goalkeeper in the face in the Premier League when he was at Southampton.
Well, Charlie's, like I said, one of the big problems with our team at the start of the year was just how quiet it was. And quite a few games where I felt we got bullied out or certainly talked out of it. Norwich away, I just felt we got talked out of the game. They were with the referee for 90 minutes, chucking themselves around the penalty area. All the screaming you get in these behind closed door games, just 75 minutes of that, to the point where in the end, lo and behold, they do get a dodgy penalty and score off that. And we don't say anything, no one's talking to the referee or anything. We're just sort of nice and quiet and taking it. Since Austin's come in, that has changed somewhat. to the point where when we beat Brentford, I think it actually crossed the line a little bit and went too far the other way, because Charlie's Charlie. He says a lot and likes what he says. We needed that. But yeah, I can see why opposition fans don't like him.
No, I mean, I think he's one of them where you'd love him to have him on your team. It's just, opposite. So yeah, I know the Championship is unpredictable, as we've kind of talked throughout this, but what is your score prediction for the game if I had to push you?
Well, I said I did one of these for Birmingham last week, and said that my predictions are notoriously awful, and whenever I predict QPR are going to win, they never do. So I'm not going to predict a win here, but that doesn't necessarily mean I don't think we will. So I'll say something ridiculous like 2-2, just two teams flying at each other and whatever, but it's not actually what I believe. I'm just really superstitious about it.
Well, we will see, mate. But yeah, no, thanks for this. I'm sure we could talk to you for ages about Championship and QPR in general, but all the best for the rest of the season, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Best of luck with it after Saturday.
Thanks, man. Cheers. Right, so we've heard from Clive. Now we're going to hear from Si, myself, and James. So, Si, you're the coach. What lineup you're going for, and which players? So, Carlos Corberan isn't in charge. Si Copeland is in charge. What are you going to do, mate? It's your first game against QPR. Fans are on you. What are you picking? What's your lineup?
It's interesting. Feel the pressure, weight of world on my shoulders. I've picked a lineup that is very similar to Friday's team, just a one change. I feel as though the guys, I feel as though it was a good, solid performance against Cardiff. Pragmatic football, percentage-based football, played in the right areas of the pitch. And where we are in the league currently, where we are in terms of the proximity to the end of the season, I think now is the right time to play sensible football, not try to be too flamboyant, and then kind of reassess that in pre-season. So it's a 3-5-2 for me. Schofield in net, a back three of Edmonds, Green, Stearman, and Sarr, with Stearman coming for Keogh being the one change. Just think he's just a slightly better player for me, kind of similar mould, but slightly better player. Rowe and Pippa, your two wing backs. A midfield three of Vallejo, Bacuna, and O'Brien, and then kind of Sanogo and Campbell up top, with Campbell just playing slightly deeper. What that does mean is it's a very strong bench, arguably the strongest bench we've had all season. We've obviously a few players returning from it. And support there. So for me, the 7 subs being Pereira, Keogh, the one centre half, Johnny Hogg, Dwayne Holmes, Isaac Mbenza, Danny Ward, and Kieran Phillips. Quite attacking bench as well, with the option to kind of change that if it's not working, introduce some wingers, etc., if we need to go after the game at some point. So that's me.
I think that you think you're the first person we've had on here who's even named the subs. That's what I like to hear. Commitment,
preparation.
It's you can't beat good preparation. That's all I'm saying. James, have you made any changes to size? Is it a similar formation for you?
It is similar to size, to be fair. So all I've changed really is Hogg has come in for Bacuna, and like size actually, Stearman's come in for Keogh. Now I kind of thought Keogh was okay in the last game, but I've just got more faith in Stearman as a player in general. And yeah, it's tough to pick between them, but I do think Stearman is probably the better player. In terms of my midfield, so I've got Rowe as a right wing back, sort of midfielder type thing, and Vallejo, Hogg, O'Brien, and then Pippa on the left again, which has been okay, I would say, and then Sanogo again and Campbell. I would play the more direct system, but I want to see it at a better quality than against Birmingham, really, and more like the Cardiff game and less like the Birmingham game where we're just sort of hoofing it to no one. Whereas Cardiff, it did feel like we did have a bit more of a plan, and we did have more of an intent to keep the ball and create chances. But to be honest, it is a bit weird, the fact that we've got to March having appointed Corberán to bring in an identity and style, and we're now talking about how best to play hoofball. But there you are. That's the kind of season we've had. But yeah, that's a story for another day. But yeah, agree basically with Si's bench as well. Major thing is just Hogg in the midfield, which I think that if Hogg's fit, then he comes into this team, and I think he's been absolutely outstanding this year. When many people thought he'd be exiting at some point, or at least being phased out. So I think that Hogg and Vallejo can work as well. This is something that Corberán was asked about in his press conference. I think that Vallejo's more of a sort of able to pass the ball forward. He's got a really good pass completion rate. It's 85%. Now, I know he gets the ball a lot and makes short passes, but I just like having a guy in there who can tackle and who can, like Hogg, and a guy in there like Vallejo who can pass forward. And it sounds really basic. And then O'Brien can progress the ball forward in terms of the counter-attack and dribbling. And it seems a bit defensive, but I just think that if you put someone in like Holmes, it just doesn't fit with the more physical and direct style. And I think that where that team is physical, it is defensive enough. We are playing away, and it is sort of creative enough as well. And I do think Sanogo looked good against Cardiff, and I do think he did look a lot more dangerous than without him, to be honest. So that's the team that I've gone for. Yep.
Lovely stuff.
Brady, I'm reflecting on that. Sorry, I'm contemplating a late change.
Go on, then.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, go, mate. It's a podcast.
So I'm listening to James, who's my assistant manager.
Yeah.
I mean,
whispering in your ear, Si.
Whispering in my ear. I'm in the suit, he's in the tracksuit. And I just wonder if maybe Hogg does need to kind of come into my team. I probably don't play Vallejo and Hogg in the midfield. I think I perhaps put Vallejo back on the right-hand side of the three centre-halves, and that's somewhere I played earlier in the season. Maybe Edmonds misses out this one, because I think James is very right in what he says, that Hogg's epitomises everything that Huddersfield Town's about and everything that Huddersfield Town probably needs right now. And even if he doesn't last 90 minutes, probably 60 minutes of Johnny Hogg is something that we probably need right now.
I think that's a good shout. I mean, what I would say, Si, as a manager, if you're flip-flopping on decisions, I don't know, you might lose the dressing room pretty quickly. But I'm joking, of course.
You're actually up against the wall, that's why.
Love it. James, you said you can't put Holmes in the midfield, but what I said to you is, I'm doing that. So here's my line. Sorry, that was really, really weird. Schofield stays in net for me. I think I got a lot of critique from Johnny Buckham when we had him on about dropping Schofield, but I think Schofield's performed all right recently. I agree with you, lads. I've taken Key out and put Stearman in. I think I've said it on here before, but what's really intrigued me about Stearman is how many of the young players like Rowe have said Stearman's been such a positive influence on them. So I think his leadership's key. And again, I'm only speculating here, but I feel like Keogh may have come back in because Stearman did get whacked in the Birmingham game quite early on and near the end as well. So who knows? I've not put Hogg in. I based on what you guys said, I think you've made a compelling case, but I don't know if he is fit, fully fit to start. I wonder if he would be better. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts the Sheffield Wednesday game and maybe he comes on during this. So I've left him out. I basically mine's the same. I've got Rowe on the right because I thought Rowe was good as a wing back defensively as well as going forward. Pippa on the left again. Because Pippa also mentioned that he likes to cut in more and he likes playing on the left, which I thought was quite interesting. And obviously he nearly scored against Cardiff. Had a good chance, good save. And then my three is O'Brien, Vallejo and Holmes. And the reason I put Holmes in is because the best performance, I think we've said it on here, was the Swansea game, and that was when he was in the centre. And I do think, although you might need the steal of Hogg, I think we maybe need someone like Holmes to open it up a bit. I think Bakuna's unlucky to miss out, but I think Bakuna is knackered. Like, he seems quite knackered in games, so I'd put Holmes in, see what he can do. And I've kept Campbell and Sanogo up front because I do think it works well. Campbell to me looks. I know he had a good chance against Cardiff, but he looks better when he's got someone closer to him. So that's my lineup. So we're all fairly the same, really. Just a couple of tinkering options in midfield. But we will see. Si, I am going to finish the podcast by asking you, well, and James as well. I'm not just going to cut off James. How do you see the game going on Saturday? And what's your score prediction?
It's interesting. I think the game will be quite similar to that we saw on Friday night in terms of how Town set up and play. That's obviously reflecting the team that I just shared with you. I think QPR will be slightly more football orientated than perhaps what Cardiff were, and try to get the ball in the deck a bit more and pass around, etc., etc. I see it being quite cagey. And I think prediction will be for me, we 1-1. Charlie Austin scoring for QPR and hopefully Yaya breaking his duck for Huddersfield Town. And I think that'll be a good point for us moving on to Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday obviously been the big game. But another point, I think, is another point closer to safety for us at this stage of the season.
I think that's similar for me. But James, what about yourself?
I think it's going to be 2-1 up the Town. Come on.
Oh, I like it.
Well, I'm trying to be a bit more positive this week because I feel like I've been really negative with score predictions. But I don't know. I do have a little bit of a good feeling about this. To be fair, I think that good memories were flooding back of the 3-0 away win that we had in the promotion season down in QPR. So yeah. I'm trying to be positive. I think that we've created the chances in the last game to score 2 goals. The XG was nearly 2, 1.96. So we've created the chances to score the goals. It's just a case of putting them away and just hope we don't get a penalty. And we, no point in getting a penalty, but we'll have to get it from open play. But I think that Sanogo will look good and we'll get better. I think that we've maybe against QPR got the license to go a bit more like the older style, sort of mixed in with the more direct style as well, with a more sort of attacking way of playing. I think that they are a team that you can play football against, and I think that do have a good feeling. And I think we could do with a really good performance from Pippa. I think he's been better in the Cardiff game, and like you say, he had that chance that was just a bit tricky because it was on his left foot, which is the problem you're going to have. But I do think I am back in Town a bit today. I am back in Town against QPR, so I'm going to go with 2-1. Try and be positive.
Oh, that's what I like to hear, mate. Up the Town, like you say. Interesting question you asked there. I'm going to ask this to both of you before I come on to how I see the game going. If we did win a penalty in this game, who would you have taken it? I know I put you on the spot there. The silence is deadly.
I think I'd probably have O'Brien on it because I don't know, for whatever reason, he just seems like the kind of player who can take the game by the scruff of the neck. And for want of a better phrase, he's got a lot of sort of passion there and a lot of sort of, I don't know, there's just something about O'Brien. There's a little bit like if he stays with us long enough, I can imagine him being a bit of a leader. And I know he's been captain against Millwall, and for me, it's sort of the leaders with the right mentality who take penalties, not necessarily the best strikers of the ball, although we have seen him strike the ball very well, in goals against Swansea this year and Barnsley the year before. So for me, it would be O'Brien, but it is worrying that it's so hard to find a good penalty taker in a team that 4 years ago won a shootout. It's crackers really, but yeah, it's worrying that we don't have that kind of leader player who would step up and take one. If Schindler were fit, he'd take one for me, but there you are.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like recently we've always been rubbish in normal games, but we seem to be all right in penalty shootouts, as we know. Si, what about you? Who would you fancy? I know I'm putting you both on the spot.
Probably got more faith in Brookie the Kitman than having anyone else, but that's probably not an option. You know what? I give it to Yaya again. I think he scored 3 out of 3 for Toulouse whilst he was there. you want your striker to want to score and want to take penalties. I was a little bit disappointed in Campbell, actually, that Campbell didn't want it. I know he's missed one, but he should have stood up for me and said, no, I'm having this. He's bottled it. So for me, yeah, again, Mike, might not be invited back. Might regret saying that, but
oh, mate, you are going to be invited back.
There's no obvious people there, is there? There's no obvious people there.
I do think it's sad in the Premier
on the
League.
pitch. And Ben's has not got a bad free kick, has he? So
yeah, I'm presented with that, definitely. I think that it's sad that in the Premier League we had players arguing over who's going to have one. Like Van La Parra stole one off. He even had that picture where he held up all the players who were supposed to take penalties and he wasn't on there, and he stole it. Was it against Bournemouth to take it? And now it's like no one wants it. Maybe it does speak to the mentality problem we've got, but like I said, maybe that's for another day.
I think for me, I would go for a left field option for penalty taker. I would go for Naby Sarr because Lee Bowyer said he was the best finisher at Charlton. And I don't know if that says a lot about Charlton. Probably does because they were relegated. But I think his goal against Blackburn was quality. He can finish, that lad. And he scored a few free kicks for Charlton. So I'd have Naby. Go on. Bit of a cult hero, Naby. We will see. We will see. Who knows? Maybe all of us are right. Maybe we'll do what Man City are supposedly doing and letting their keeper take it. So maybe Schofield will take it. Who knows? How I see this game going, I'm a bit like you, Si. I think it'll be a bit of a cagey one because they're in good form, although we've not got a bad record at QPR. But I keep predicting 1-1. So I'm going to go 2-2 because I feel like we might get a couple, but I could see them getting a couple. So I think it'll be an interesting game. Depends who scores really first, but I agree with James. I think especially in that Cardiff game, we're a bit unlucky. We've not really scored recently, and I feel like we could just get a couple in here, but I do see QPR getting a couple. I think Willick could have a good game. Chris Willick, the best player of all time, as me and James keep making out on here, clearly. But also Austin, like you hit the nail on the head side. Awful player to play against, like just going to be in your face, going to be rough, and he's proven at this level. I could see him scoring as well. So 2-2, but I hope James is right up the town. Like you said, James, up the town. We will see. But that's it, gents. Si, thanks for coming on, making your debut.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right, mate. You will be back. It's only Chris Willick. I'm not going to get upset about it. Don't worry. And James, cheers for coming on again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No, it's good. It's good to have you on, mate, as always. And thanks to you, listener, for listening to this. So have that and enjoy your weekend. And let's hope we get a win up the town.
Oh, what a night. Late in May in 2017, Schindler scored. It was a effing dream. What a feeling, what a night. Oh, what a night. Wagner singing, we are Premier League. The greatest sight, St. George's Square at sea. What an evening, what a night. Oh, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance. Oh, what a night. Lost so safe and mesmerizing me. Low charge and flattened all Chelsea. Stamford Bridge, oh, what a night. Whoa, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance.